Hi, my name is Chris Ramirez, and I'll be presenting how the biogeographical speciation is done by isolation. My thesis, in an insight of different animals, mainly weevils, bats, mice, and ants within varying islands around the globe, we will be able to see where evolution occurs and adaptations arise in relation to the different biogeographical locations in which they exist. Basically, you will see how their geography, where they live, affects um, how they are and how speciation occurs. But to understand speciation, we have to know what a species is. And species is the most basic form um, of classification for organisms. And what that means is basically two organisms that don't mate or don't have sexual encounters um, are said to be different species. And at the bottom right here, there's there's a list of different things that may cause speciation, like their geographical isolation, mutation, natural selection, genetic drift, and so on and so forth. I really liked this graphic. Um, as you can see here, there's two foxes and a body of water in between them. And the caption says, "If you really loved me, you'd swim across." Um, Obviously, it's not that simple for animals. They can't just swim across. Um, Most islands or most places are just too far apart for animals just to cross over, and that's what happens with geographical isolation is they have no way to be in contact with each other, or there's something limiting their ability to do so. So one thing I really liked about the beak of the finch, the reading that we did, was it really explained why we use islands to do these studies. They're isolated land masses with water all around them. They provide new climate and niches for um, big populations to be split off into smaller ones, and therefore causing speciation to occur naturally. This right here is the Falkland Island weevil. It is green in coloration, and I'll explain that in the next slide. But this is it was an inhabitant of South America, and the Falkland Islands themselves were thought to be part of South America at one point, and a glacial event broke those islands off of the continent itself, and the melting of glaciers rose the sea levels to um, actually separate that island into more little islands. And the area in which the Falkland Islands are located tend to have high winds and subantarctic temperatures, which don't allow a lot of vegetation to grow. But the vegetation that is there is all grasslands. There's not very many trees. And the problem with not having trees is these weevils were being preyed on pretty heavily when they first got to the Falkland Islands. Uh, South America provides a variety of different weevils, different colors. They had yellow, green. Some of them were like a bluish green, like we saw in the last picture. But these all stood out to predators once they hit the Falkland Island because they didn't have the canopy to hide underneath because there was no trees. And therefore, those with the green coloration flourished um, due to natural selection. And they didn't have the threat to predation like the other weevils had, and therefore they were the ones that were able to inhabit the Falkland Islands the most. These guys are my favorite. These are the Western pipistrelle bats. As you can tell here, this guy is just a teeny little guy. He fits on this guy's thumb. He's got a small head, small body. He is made to live in a cold or cool, moist climate. And this guy is the Eastern pipistrelle bat. Larger body, larger head, and overall just bigger in stature than the Western pipistrelle bat. And that is because the Western pipistrelle bat, its prey, the insects on which it eats, are very numerous, but they tend to be smaller in size and a lot more chewable for these guys. In comparison to the Eastern pipistrelle bat, they live in an arid climate where there's not a lot of insects, but the insects that are found have hard exoskeletons and therefore need the bigger head to be able to chomp down on those guys. Oops. Let me go back to that. Okay. They were separated. They separated themselves. They weren't separated by a geographical feature, but it was their biogeographical location in which they preferred to go to one area or another. So it was more of a matter of preference than, or more of a matter of where their food was than where they could survive or where they could cross over. These are the Go Island mice. This guy right here is an albatross, a baby albatross. And these guys are notorious for killing the albatross. They're about 1.5 times larger than the average field or house mouse. And I honestly don't know why they don't call them rats, because they're pretty big. And this large stature wasn't due to their climate or environment, but because they were separated, because they were brought over through ships or whatnot, they were separated from the mainland, and bigger mice just had a better fitness on the islands. They were able to outcompete the smaller mice, and therefore the bigger mouse trait just became genetic. It became something that just happened. These mice were able to become large enough to eat albatross, and in this next figure, we see that Go Island mice right here, this little blue dot, are actually bigger than most island mice in general. These are mainland mice that we see. Here's the US, Chile, England, Panama. And island mice in general have a bigger stature than mainland mice. But the Go Island mice tend to have bigger stature than those of different islands as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. These little guys are the acorn ants. They are mainly found in the southeastern part of the United States. They are darker in color and usually bigger than the normal ant. But these guys, for environmental reasons, got to establish this light pigmentation. And it wasn't due to predation like the weevils had it, but their separation from the mainland and their close proximity to the equator put them in more direct sunlight than they would have in the southeastern United States, and therefore developed this lighter pigmentation to reflect the sunlight. Um, it was said that these ants are not naturally found in the Caribbean, but but rather they were brought over by human impacts. They might have been brought over by ships or planes or whatnot, but their migration to the Caribbean has led to their different colorations, and like the weevil, they were able to thrive better than those with darker pigmentations. Um, so why does all of this matter? Biogeography has a big influence on whatever organism it's encountering. Um, as we look at the world today, we have different colors and body types on different continents. And one of the questions that I raised was, how the human race began to experience speciation from isolation of different continents before ships and other forms of travel were created. Um, we see on different continents that there are distinctions between people of one continent to another. And that could be from environmental factors, uh, biological factors, social factors. But nonetheless, it was the geographical isolation of those continents that might have been able to cause the start of a speciation between the human race. As we see with the Neanderthals in the past, um, there was lots of speciation going on because there was really fast climate changes. Organisms will never cease to split off from each other due to the ever-changing biogeographical locations in which they exist and the climates in which they encounter. That's something that's very important to understand. Is I believe that geography has everything to do with evolution. Um, where a organism is placed and where it has the ability to interact with other um, organisms of, well, their inter and intra um, species relationships allows them to change over time. And these are my citations. Thank you.